entire audience while being verbally attacked by the trainers. Well, come on. A public opinion poll conducted a few years ago showed that the number one most fearful situation an individual could encounter is to speak to an audience. It's ranked above window washing outside the 85th floor of the office building. So you can imagine the fear and tension this situation generates within the participants. Many faint. Most cope with the stress by mentally going away. They literally go into an alpha state, which literally makes them many times as suggestible as they normally would be. Another loop in the downward spiral into conversion is successfully effected. Now, the fifth step up. The clue that the conversion tactics are being used is the introduction of jargon. New terms that have meaning only to the insiders who participate. Vicious language that is also frequently used purposely to make participants uncomfortable. The final tip-off is that there is no humor in the communications, at least until the participants are converted. Then, merrymaking and humor are highly desirable as symbols of the new joy the participants have supposedly found. Over the years, I've conducted professional seminars to teach people to be hypnotists, trainers, and counselors. I've had many of those who conduct trainings, rallies, come to me and say, I'm here because I know what I'm doing works, but I don't know why it works. After showing them how and why, many have gotten out of the business and have decided to approach it differently or in a much more loving and supportive manner. So the sixth tip-off is the decognition process. Once the initial conversion is effected, cults, armed services, and similar groups cannot have syncretism among their members. Members must respond to commands and do as they are told, otherwise they are dangerous to the organizational control. And that is true. This is normally accomplished in the three-step decognition process. Step 1, the alertness reduction. The controllers cause the nervous system to malfunction, making it difficult to distinguish between fantasy and reality. This can be accomplished in several ways. First, by poor diet. Watch out for brownies and Kool-Aid. The sugar throws off the nervous system. More subtle is the spiritual diet used by many cults. They eat only vegetables and fruits, vegans, without grounding of grains, nuts, seeds, dairy products, fish, or meat. An individual becomes spacey. Inadequate sleep is another primary way to reduce alertness, especially when combined with the long hours of work and intense physical activity. Also being bombarded with intense and unique experiences achieves the same result. Step 2, program confusion. So we've all been subjected to this. You are mentally assaulted while your alertness is being reduced, as in Step 1. This is accomplished with a deluge of new information, lectures, discussion groups, encounters, or one-on-one processing, which usually amounts to the controller bombarding the individual with questions. During this phase of decognition, reality and illusion often merge, and the perverted logic is likely to be accepted. Step 3, thought stopping. Techniques are used to cause the mind to go flat. These are altered states of consciousness, or conscious techniques that are initially induce calmness. And that is correct. That is exactly what initially develops. By giving the mind something simple to deal with and focusing awareness. The continued use brings on a feeling of elation, eventually hallucination. The result is that the reduction of thought, eventually, if used long enough, this is cessation of all thought and withdrawal from everyone and everything except that which the controllers direct. The takeover is then complete. It is important to be aware that when members or participants are instructed to use thought-stopping techniques, they're told that they will benefit by doing so. They will become better soldiers, or find enlightenment. These are three primary techniques used in the thought-stopping. First, which we're all familiar with, is marching. Thump, 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 beat, literally generates self-hypnosis and thus great susceptibility to suggestion. So you all see this in the military, which is brainwashing on public display. The second thought, thought-stopping technique is meditation. If you spend an hour to an hour and a half a day in meditation, after a few weeks, there is a great probability that you will not return to a full beta consciousness, a full alert consciousness. You will remain in a fixed state of alpha for as long as you continue to meditate. I'm not saying this is bad if you do it for yourself. This may be beneficial. You know, health improved, other peace of mind and other things have improved. That's true. But it is a fact that you are causing your mind to go flat. I've worked with meditators on an EEG, electroencephalogram machine, and the results are conclusive. The more you meditate, the flatter your mind becomes, and eventually, and especially, if used to excess or in combination with decognition, all thought ceases. And this is the whole point that is never brought out in any of the Eastern representatives or Mahesh Yogi or any of these demon-possessed individuals. Never explained to you what you relinquished. You personally relinquish your thought processes. You are totally susceptible to demon possession. You can be taken over by another being in another world. So understand that. If you're getting certain benefits from it, because yes, you do get certain benefits from it. So keep that in mind. It is never, ever brought out that way. I would have said 40–50% of the human beings in modern India are demon-possessed from those that have been brought up under this feature of removing your ability to think on your own, which is what this really means. So, the more you meditate, the flatter your mind becomes until eventually, and especially if used in excess in combination with decognition, as all thought ceases. Some spiritual groups see this as nirvana. Rubbish. It is simply a predictable psychological result. And if heaven on earth is a non-thinking, non-involvement, I question why we are here. Because here we're into the purpose of life and why you're born, and etc. Important questions? Yes. Premium. The paramount important. So, the third thought-stopping technique is chanting. Often chanting and meditation, speaking in tongues, could be concluded in this category. All three stopping techniques produce an altered state of consciousness. This may be very good if you are controlling the process, if you are controlling the input. I personally use at least one self-hypnosis programming session every day, and I know how beneficial it is for me. But you need to know if you use these techniques to the degree of remaining continually in alpha, and although you'll be very mellow, you will also be very suggestive. So the fact that you don't perhaps comment or complain about anything isn't necessarily good. It's very good for those in control of you or us in general. So, true believers, mass movements. Before ending this session on conversion, I wanted to talk about the people who are the most susceptible to it and about mass movements. I am convinced that at least a third of the population is what Eric Hoffer calls true believers. They are joiners and followers, people who want to give away their power. They look for answers and meaning and enlightenment outside of themselves. Hoffer wrote in The True Believer, a classic on mass movements, says true believers are not intent on bolstering and advancing their cherished self, but are those craving to be rid of the unwanted self. They are followers, not because of a desire for self-advancement, but because they can satisfy their passion for self-renunciation.